my student organizers, please.
Thank you, everybody. Welcome so much. Thank you for creating this time. I'm sure it's going to be a wonderful session. Thank you. Over to
I had warned Rishabh in advance that I have to disconnect
by
at
12.
12.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Ankush will keep that in mind. He's the moderator for the panel.
Okay. No, I just thought I'll remind you. I don't want to be impolite, but that Anil, you will understand that's a call of CII. so when Chandrajit calls and says, "Look, we need you desperately," then I say, "Okay, I'll find a way to accommodate both." Okay.
Thank you, sir. So,
Kavinder, welcome as well. Welcome.
Hi, Anil.
Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Go ahead, Ankush.
So welcome back, everyone, to the Inspired Leadership Conference organized by Soil Institute of Management, Gurugram, in collaboration with Shizuoka University, Japan. I am Devduti Sengupta from the marketing cohort of the School of Inspired Leadership, and I will be your host for the upcoming segments. Mike Lowry once said, and I quote, "If somebody goes to a discussion and they have a discussion, I do think people walk away with a real understanding of the prevalent issues." Keeping this thought in mind, we have now arrived at our first panel discussion of the conference featuring leaders of top global companies from diverse sectors who would be discussing and sharing their learnings and experiences on the topic business strategies, global integration, and local responsiveness. This as a part of revival process in the wake of pandemic, which would majorly focus upon impact of business operations, strategies and models to drive competitive advantage, and opportunities that lie ahead. We are delighted to have with us today in the panel, first and foremost, Mr. Kavinder Singh, the Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director, Mahindra Holidays and Resorts India. Mr. Singh has been at the helm of Mahindra Holidays and Resorts India for over 6 years now, and earlier had also worked with Pidilite Industries as a Chief Executive Officer, Consumer Products MNT. We also have with us Mr. Satish Sharma, who is the President and whole-time Director, Apollo Tyres Limited. He is also the Chairman of Automotive Tire Manufacturers Association and has been associated with Apollo Tyres for almost 2 decades. We have with us Mr. Vijay Thadani, Managing Director, NIIT Limited. Mr. Thadani is the co-founder of NIIT Group and has been leading the group for over 39 years now. We have with us Mr. Arindam Das, the Chief Executive Officer, DMI Finance Private Limited. Mr. Das has more than 18 years of experience in various multinational companies and large private sectors across P&L, business development, product distribution, operations and risk management, and audit. At last, we have Mr. Apurv Chamaria, the Senior Vice President and Chief of Staff, Tech Mahindra. Mr. Chamaria has been the Chief Revenue Officer at RateGain, which is the world's leading software as a service provider to travel and hospitality sectors. He has also worked with HCL, where he headed the corporate marketing. And we also have with us Mr. Ankush Chopra, our role model soil alumnus and former senior manager at Ernst & Young, who would be moderating this panel discussion. So all may kindly note, Mr. Thadani would be gracing our event till 12 p.m. due to prior commitments. So now I pass on to Mr. Chopra to take the event forward. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Devduti. Thank you for the warm introduction and welcome. My good morning to all the panel members and also everybody who's there on the conference. Delighted to be here. Being the part of the first batch of Soil, it's always a pleasure, always to come back and do something for the for the school. And when Nitika ji called me, said that if you could be part of the panel, I was more than happy to be here. So let's get started. Warm welcome again to everybody. when I got this invitation, I was reflecting on what happens every year around this time when we're entering the new year. There's a lot of hope. There is a sense of positivity, and there's a sense of purpose to start something new every year. And this is exactly what we all had 12 months back when we entered 2020. We were all in for a big surprise, and COVID came in and it brought the entire world to a grinding halt. We went through times which we none of us has ever seen, and something which was completely unimaginable. What this pandemic did was it attacked the fundamental of human existence, being social with each other, standing with each other when times are tough. That's one thing which this pandemic attacked more than anything else. While we were grappling through the physical and emotional wellness, the economic value was being eroded across the world at a very rapid pace. Though the pandemic brought economic success to a few organizations, it made life more challenging for most in general. And that's what we are here, gathered here to discuss today. That how has the industry adapted? That's the beauty of human beings. That as soon as a difficult time comes in, we are very quick to adapt. We are very quick to reinvent. We are very quick to move forward. And that's what we want to hear at times like this, when things are getting slightly better. We want to hear those stories. What is it that we've done? What is it that we look forward to? And how can we learn from what has happened in the past few months? So let's get started. And I'll start with my first question, and this will be a question which will be for all panel members, and we'll start probably with Mr. Thrani and then get views from everybody else. Very simple question: how has the pandemic impacted your organization, and what has been the top area of focus in your business strategy for the last 8 to 9 months? We'll start with Mr. Thrani, and then we'll move on to others and get their views as well.
Okay, thank you, Ankush. It's always good to be back home, back to the nest, right? So good. Congratulations. I think everyone should do that for their alma mater. Okay, so let me start by saying there is a famous quote of Lenin which says, "For decades nothing happens, and then in weeks decades happen." Right? So I think COVID has caused some such thing. In a few weeks, a decade's worth of lifetime actually happened. And now we obviously all believe that we've been locked in for decades now in our homes. The second thing, and this is actually, we went back to this study. Normally in times of crisis, there was a Harvard study which said that there are two responses, and to the award-winning study, fight or flight, right? So there are two basic human responses. We decided we will fight. And of course, there is a third one, which is fright, where you get just blinded by the headlights. So we decided fight, and I think at the back of us was the strong value systems that we have in NIIT. We are a services business, people-driven organization, and in the very first line of our value system is NIIT's people. So our very first response was, we need to look after our people. And there, I think the overlying theme was an agile and decisive response, because we didn't want people to be in confusion. So we first moved everybody back home. We in fact did it 1 week before the lockdown. And we said everybody work from home. And because we had that 1 week, we could shift computers and stuff like that all to their homes, and they could started operating from home. The second was to make sure that we continue to look after their well-being. So their safety and well-being was our primary concern. Since I have a few minutes only, I'll keep it very short. The second was to look after our customers. Once again, making sure that A, they get continuity of service. We train people, right? That's our business. We train people. So how do we provide continuity of training to everybody? And those who used to come to our centers, we gave them digital learning. Fortunately, technology comes naturally to us. And sometimes later, maybe I will talk a little bit more. Digital maturity would have helped a lot. The second was come up with new offerings, which I call the offerings for the new normal. These are programs for the new normal. How to be a remote worker, how to be a work from home, and obviously all on digital media. The third was our shareholders. Shareholders are very important, and therefore communication was very important. I think we had more shareholder calls than we have had in a 3-month period there. And last was our vendors, because we also realized that our vendors, especially the smaller vendors, will have liquidity crunches. So we made sure that we made their payments in advance. In fact, we got that idea from some of our large customers. We do training outsourcing for large multinationals. And some of them called us and said, look, you may be having a liquidity crunch, so we are paying you in advance. We are paying you faster. We thought we should be doing that. That was in NIIT. And then in NIIT University, the legacy of NIIT passed on, and we switched over to digital learning. And we have always believed parents are our partners in the students' education process. So constant communication with them and making sure that students maintain continuity of their studies. We worked on new pedagogical models, and maybe we can talk about more later. But first, going fully digital, and second, an agile and decisive response is the summary of what I would like to say. I'm sure there'll be another occasion to talk more about these things.
No, thank you, Mr. Mattarani. And I think beautiful to hear the way you put it, and you went back to values and said people, our people, employees. That becomes our first priority. I mean, that's something wonderful to hear from you. Thank you so much for your thoughts, Mr. Sharma. I'll move to you. Same question. Would like to hear what was your response, and how did Apollo deal with this situation?
Thank you, Ankush. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here. So Apollo Tyres, while I'd like to believe a very modern Indian multinational organization growing very fast, but at the core of it, we're a manufacturing company with 5 plants in India. And we had the belief system that, manufacturing companies, these work from home concepts, etc., do not apply to us. We need physicality, we need to see each other, and all of that. So in that sense, we were fairly old-fashioned, and many of these things did get challenged. So that's just to give you a backdrop of from where we were coming from. And let me pick up the latter part of your question on top areas of focus, which is like Vijay said, business continuity obviously was the first and foremost for every leadership team to deal with. And we are process industry. So, as soon as the Janta shutdown curfew was announced, and thereafter the lockdowns, etc., the migrant labors, everybody flighting away. So all of our operations came to a grinding halt. There was varied degree of understanding from in various states, in various municipalities, of whether we are a process industry, can we run our plants, or what is it that we can do, etc. So getting all that back into shape. Fortunately, we had digitalized our order to cash about 3-4 years back, and that came in very handy for us. There we had 700 trucks stranded on the highways. Drivers had run away, and those stocks were also not insured. The force majeure doesn't cover them. So areas like that, the whole first thing was to get the operation back into business, and that was a large portion of our first response. The second was that the first quarter, I think, very much was a washout for everyone, and we were faced with our first quarterly loss, which we saw after more than 2 decades of our So we did have some losses before that, but since last 20 years plus, we've been fairly good on our report card. And that sort of shocked everyone, So, and shock sometimes is a good thing to have, I feel. And that shock spurred a lot of cost consciousness, which would have otherwise been, more of a lip talk and less of a reaction. There was also very interesting things of management coming around and volunteering to take salary cuts at a certain level. And even when we did take some of those decisions, then there were people down the line who said, we also want to be part of this, showing the spirit of the one of our core values is one family, which sort of came around in a big way. So cost consciousness, I think, uh, we had things like what is a good cost and what is a bad cost, and some of these things are going to stick with us hopefully as we move forward. And the fixed costs got challenged in a very, very big way, and some of those very good things happened. The other thing, I would bucket it under communication, reaching out to people, reaching out to teams, allaying their anxieties, um, talking about what's happening, how do we see the situation, how do we see, listening from them, how do they see, what are the challenges they are facing, all of that. uh, we went on a communication overdrive, and it sustained over a period of time. In fact, one of the things I was fond of always saying, or not fond of saying, but believing in a way that, as you rise up the corporate ladders, the very areas that make you successful, you sort of keep on putting layers in. So all the statutory meetings, etc., don't allow you to be with the customers to the extent that you would want to be, with your team to the extent that you want to be. So every Saturday we started something which we called as Rendezvous with Satish, and where I picked up 10 random people across the completely frontline, and talking to them, listening to them, chatting with them for 2 hours. So things like that. Communication, I think, took a whole bucket of innovation around this point. And I would say policy making was the whole idea of earlier also we used to say, is the 5-year plan still worth it? Is a 3-year a good midterm plan? Now we were questioning even the annual budget, and we said even the annual budget is not, and we should have a quarterly thing, etc. So, and policy making, like I was explaining you, the salary cuts and all, and we did take some of those tough calls. But the beauty of it was, as the market revived and as the recovery set in, we had a very sharp recovery in second quarter. In fact, in one of the months, we had a year-on-year growth in many categories. We did our best ever. So there was. So we'll not get into that because that becomes industry specific. But we then reversed some of the decisions on the salary cuts, and we did declare a zero increment year. And that also very recently in January we are announcing, from current effect increments. So that took people by. So the people participated in the austerity measures, but as things improved, we also sort of rolled back a whole lot of austerity measures that we took, which also showed the genuinity of the management, and sort of reinforced a lot of the value systems. So policy making was very nimble and aligned to the times, I would thought. Then what we also did was that a portion of our team, we said that you are going to think through how we can emerge stronger out of this crisis, while rest of us are sort of looking at running the operations day to day and figuring it out. But how is there an opportunity there? And every crisis has an opportunity, as we know. So what is it? How can we use this crisis in a good way? And a select few, and we call them Apollo catalysts, who worked on bringing out ideas on what we could do in the future, and some of those things. With respect to impact, I would say we witnessed new levels of productivity in the organization. Even while we were a manufacturing company, I still, 22nd March is when the last I went to office. I'm still working out of home. Can you beat that? And tomorrow, on Monday, we are again discussing. We earlier said 3rd January will open. Most likely, we'll take it to the next fiscal. Because we are just working so beautifully. Productivity levels are so high, and we are not missing anything. Of course, there are the manufacturing teams and the selling team and people who have to have some area of physicality and all that. But that apart, we are doing that. And the other thing I would say is that the mindsets have got impacted in a big way. We'll not discuss which area it went, but broadly these are the impacts. Productivity levels have been challenged, and I think for any leader it's very difficult to change mindsets, and this pandemic has really opened that bit for us. So I'll stop here for the time being. Thank you, Ankush, for that opening question.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma. I agree, especially for organizations like yours, which have a manufacturing setup. Lockdown was a very, very difficult time, but so delighted to hear that, what you're mentioning, that currently you're saying productivity levels are at real high. And that's something which is extremely refreshing to hear. Also, the mindset that how can we come out stronger from this pandemic. The Apollo Catalyst example that you gave just shows the clarity of thought that the leadership has, and what you were talking about. And I think what really touched me the most was the fact that you said that you were nimble on your policies. It's easy for an organization to announce that this year is going to be zero increment, we're going to have salary cuts, and probably harder to go back on those and announce that we've recovered faster than we thought, and we are going to go back. And taking that stand and taking that courage to take that back, I think this is fantastic, and this is absolutely wonderful to hear. Looking forward to hearing more from you as we move along. I'd like to invite Mr. Singh now. I understand, Singh, that the initial part must have been extremely challenging for Mahindra Holidays as well. Very excited to hear how you relooked at your strategy, especially during lockdown, and how do we come out of the phase that we've gone through? How do we get our customers' confidence back? Over to you, Mr. Singh.
Thank you, Ankush. And once again, thanks to Anil for inviting me to this very interesting conversation. I think the conversation has really got off to an amazing start. And I expect this to be a great learning experience. I think, the business that we are in, which is a contact business, it is unthinkable for us to sort of shut down the resorts literally in about 5-6 days. We have about 100 plus, 60 of them in India, about 40-45 outside the country. We have a large presence in the Scandinavian countries, Finland, Sweden, and Mediterranean part of Europe, which is in Canary Islands. So we had to, of course, the timing was the Finland part started to shut down around 10th March. And our resorts started to shut down from 15th, 17th March in India. And we have never seen this kind of I come from manufacturing background. I joined Mahindra 6 years ago. I've had experience of shutting down factories, but shutting down resorts where guests are staying and you are canceling bookings, and this is early days. And as was being said, we also moved into work from home from around 19th March, when we took the call that it is probably not safe, both from the guest's point of view as well as from the employee's point of view. I would say that when I come to response, we sat down for a few days on, of course, virtually, to start to think as to what is the glue that's going to hold us together. When you have people spread around the world in India, and they are, forced to stay indoors, and there are no guests coming, there are no customers coming, what are the worries, that we have, and how do we deal with them? So we realized that the biggest, strength that we have is that we have 80% of our people who are in customer contact. This is a business where We have a very large sales force. Typically in hotel industry, you have B2B business. Ours is a true B2C business. We have about 260,000 member families who are our members. Of course, they are in their homes, and all we had to think about was how do we remain in contact with them. But when it comes to our employees, about 6,000 of them spread across, how do we really show our empathy? How do we connect with them? That to us was a number one issue, because we knew one day this too shall pass. But how are we going to come back? How are we going to get our people in the frame of mind to start reopening resorts? Because I mean, it is not easy to, after a big shutdown, to think about reopening. And how do you get people back in these circumstances? Were the thoughts early on in mind. So we said, let's look at a framework. We are anyway driven by our Mahindra Group's RISE philosophy. Apurva would understand. And hi Apurva. The philosophy is pretty simple. The RISE philosophy, which is about accepting no limits and using alternative thinking to drive positive change in all stakeholders. So early on, the moment the pandemic was beginning to take over, and I think the moment Mr. Modi announced the 21 days of lockdown, at the corporate level, Anand spoke to me and said that, can we offer our resorts for people who might just need them in these times? And the answer was, without thinking even for a second, yes. And we were out talking to the local administration, saying that how can we be of help at this time? Because resorts are anyway shut. If there is a need, we can. And we did keep skeleton staff because we can't abandon our properties wherever they are. So that was one early actions that I remember. The second action we said was that how do we remain connected with our members? So we had a campaign on the social media on these 21 days of family togetherness. And that's something that we did. And the third thing we said, that as far as our organization is concerned, the framework that we came out, inspired from the philosophy of RISE, was a 5C framework. It might look a little cliche, but it's still holding on true for us. So I may just take the liberty to share the concept of 5C. We said, Corona, of course, incidentally starts with C, but we were not inspired by that C. That's really a bad C or a big C. We said, let's look at what's really, really core at this time. The first is compassion. The first C is compassion. Can we be compassionate towards our people? Can we be compassionate towards our vendors? Can we be compassionate to members who may ask for frequent changes of their plans? Some policies have to be looked at. So compassion became a very critical word in our way of dealing with people. Okay, because that then defines how you're going to interact. Because when it comes and by the way, on 4th April, we had a town hall where we launched this 5C program. So from 22nd March to 4th April, we were, identifying this. And then after the compassion, we said, what do we need at this time? All of us are restless. Can we be creatively restless? So we create the second C was be creatively restless. And even today, I must say that this creative restlessness really runs through the DNA of the organization. The third was the probably the most important C. How will we maintain customer connect? We have 260,000 key accounts. How are we going to remain connected with them? We can't forget them. They can't forget us. There's no way. So that was one reason for that third C. The fourth C was conserve. Can we conserve our resources? And I will talk about conservation a little later. When I talk of conservation of resources, it meant every kind of conservation, whether it is related to money, whether it is related to environment around us, which anyway, we have been doing a lot of work on sustainability in and around our resorts. So we said, let's just focus on conservation, because conservation is going to probably take us out of this difficult circumstance. The fifth C was, can we use this opportunity to build capability? Can we build digital capabilities? We are already a digital first organization in member interface. 85% of our bookings happen digitally, and we have an omni-channel experience for our customers. But we said, can we Can we build capabilities? And that is where we started a series called I Teach series, where leaders, any leader, could pick up a subject of their choice and they could share their learnings on that. And that series goes on even till today. It happens once a week. A leader can choose an area that he wants to highlight and talk about, and there are obviously Q&A. Parallelly, we said we can't just launch these 5 C's and allow it to sort of remain a head office idea. Can we ensure that at least on the 3 C's, the creative restlessness C, the compassion C, and the capability C, can we get some ideas from the ground, right from the person who is a steward in our resort to the, any level. So we started to get ideas and we started sharing. And even today we share every day one idea, which has come from 5,500 team members that we have. So intense focus on people, because we realize that, one thing that we can never compromise on is the culture that we have built of service. By the way, we have a culture which we call as Seva, and the Seva stands in our terminology as service with empathy, warmth, and attentiveness. So I will later on talk about how do you show warmth when you're wearing a mask when you come to our resorts. I will talk about that later. But I think these 5 C's have helped us navigate these difficult times. So if I fast forward to now, we have all our resorts operational now. And the best part is that in a selling environment where you need to have a face-to-face meeting, we went virtual in 1 week's time. Not only that, the creative restlessness helped us to create a video selling tool, in-house design, in precisely 7 days. So all our meetings with the prospects went virtual. Even in the times when we were on a complete lockdown, we were selling memberships. We didn't keep our salespeople sort of idle. We said work from home, but please do take meetings. As far as the resorts team was concerned, they went, into a very different zone. They said, how do we give contactless experience to customers and yet maintain the warmth and attentiveness? So they did a lot of work. I will share some of that a little later, not to go too long. But I think the most important thing we realize, which will become important, are two from a customer standpoint, which is safety. Because when you go out into a resort now, you need to feel safe. Whatever programs you may have, you need to feel safe. So we launched a program called Club Mahindra Safe Stay Program. Everybody has done it. Every hospitality chain has done it. But the way our program is different is we not only created contactless check-in, checkouts, which was done in about 1.5 months' time. Our technology team swung into action. But we also, and by the way, when you check into hotels, you may realize that quite a lot of big chains haven't still done that. The second point we said is that can we learn from hospitals? I mean, God forbid, none of us should ever go to a hospital, but prior to COVID and even now, if anybody has to go to a hospital, you never ask that who was there prior to me in this room. We don't want that kind of a question to be asked. So can we tie up with the most, the number one facility management services provider for hospital in terms of disinfection protocols? Can we learn from them? So that was the creative restlessness piece which was coming into play. But last but not the least, you can put up anything. How do you know they are working on the ground? Because people are all over and there can be slip-ups and you just can't afford slip-ups here in this business. So we tied up with Bureau Veritas and we said, hey, can you, do you have any protocol? So they said, yeah, we have a COVID safe protocol, which we just launched a week ago. So we said we would like to get it certified. So they said initially it will be remote certification, and then we will move on to a full certification by physical visits. Happy to share that 36 of our resorts right now are platinum certified by Bureau Veritas. And most importantly, what has happened is that the Safe Stay program became a rallying cry for all our people in the resorts. And then we went on to think about that, yes, in the resort, you may feel safe. How do you get to the resort? And you start to think like a customer and say that, am I willing to get out right now? And at this, I'm talking around July, August time. All of this is a bit of a journey that I'm sharing with you. And that time we said, this may be a great time to look at what is available around us. So we said, Mahindra First Choice Wheels has a chief executive. He's a dear friend of mine. Ashutosh Pandey. I was casually checking in with him. I said, what are you guys doing? He says, we have a sanitization program. I said, hey, why can't we offer a sanitization program to our members if they want to go? So we created this idea of an ecosystem. We said there is a travel with confidence ecosystem, which we must launch. The travel with confidence ecosystem is very simple. You want to go out, you need to know what are the requirements in every state. This was during the period July to October. Now most of the changes have happened where you can travel. So do you need an e-pass? Do you need a COVID certification? Do you need to quarantine? So we created a travel with confidence helpline. We promoted that within our member base. We also said, this is a great time to tie up with the insurance companies, to offer insurance, travel insurance, medical insurance, as well as the sanitization facility. And even why not COVID test at home by the time the COVID tests have begun to get at home. So we said, why don't we just put it all together in travel with confidence and make this as another big campaign, communication campaign with our members and get them to start travel. You will be amazed that month on month, our occupancies have grown, starting with 7% in June. Last month, November, we clocked 74% occupancies, and December, even if I invited you to our resorts, I have no place. It's full. So we are running, and we most likely December we'll close with 80% plus. And by the way, when we were opening up our resorts, the response that we got from our employees, our associates who are working on the resorts, they were too happy to come back because they knew we will take care of them. We created a bubble for them so that they are not exposed. So the people who are customer facing, they actually stay inside the resort. So we had to do lots of these things to build confidence in the employees, as well as our guests and customers. And most importantly, focus on communication. As was said earlier, we had to also do a huge amount of communication with all stakeholders, whether our vendors, service providers, whether our shareholders, because I agree, we have also done so many investor calls these times. And the best part is we also learned in this that we have an amazingly unique and resilient business model because, I will maybe probably explain a little later, but in these two quarters, we have delivered the highest ever profits. And by the way, we did not deliver these profits through the cost cutting that, we had, when a lot of companies have done through the people route. We didn't have to resort to that. We had various other levers that we pressed, and more on that later. But these have been probably some of the best quarters that we have had in terms of profitability. And then we realized that how we have to just count our blessings. And most important, be bound by this common philosophy of RISE and the 5C philosophy that we created, and just stay true to that and constantly keep innovating in these difficult times, because the belief was this too shall pass. And I think we are more or less coming out of the situation. And this is, I just thought this is a story that is worth sharing in this business, which is extremely contact driven. How do you really deal with the fears of the people who are in the resort welcoming guests? Because they are also fearful for their families and their lives. And of course, guests also are wondering whether I should be here. So the other dream that we have is, can we make our places even safer than your homes? Can they be safe sanctuaries? And most importantly, the brand Mahindra inspires trust. And we believe now that trust is even more important than it was ever before. Because right now, price is not the only determining factor for you to take a decision to come to the resorts. You are going to look at whom you can trust.
Amazing story, Mr. Singh. And I think what I captured was that you also said it in your own words, that you stayed true to what was important. And I think that genuine and earnest attempt in ensuring customer safety led to the kind of the growth that you were talking about and kind of profitability. I'm very excited, and I look forward to hearing some more innovation as we move forward in the discussion. Thank you so much for your opening remarks. And staying within the Mahindra family, I move on to Mr. Chamaria, who's recently joined TechM, and would like to hear your views as well.
Thank you, Ankush, and thank you, Kavinder. I look forward to catching up with you. So, Winston Churchill said something very interesting. He said, never let a good crisis go wasted. And we at TechM truly believe in the saying. The Roman god Janus had two sets of eyes. one pair focusing on what lay ahead and one on what lay behind. We at Techem are able to relate to this. We have used this crisis to not only look behind and see what could we have done better, but also look ahead on what can we do to capitalize on the business opportunities ahead. One of the toughest mental balancing acts is how do you really explore and exploit? What we have done is we've worked on a philosophy of repair, rally, and rise. Repair was all about improving experiences for employees and customers and being very cost efficient. Rally was about re energizing our core business and reimagining it, getting even more closer to customers and helping them optimize costs and make the most of emerging opportunities. And Rise, which is still something which is out and we're working on it, is accepting no limits and driving alternate thinking to push forward on new businesses like cloud, data and analytics, cybersecurity, and AI. We've been truly blessed as a part of the larger group philosophy of working on a sustainable environment. We've done a lot of work on ESG, and we've recently announced that we will become completely carbon neutral by 2030. So we're very proud of that fact. We want to build a sustainable enterprise, which is not only good for shareholders and employees, but it's also fantastic for the environment around us.
Thank you so much, and always good to connect with somebody from Tech Mahindra. This was my first organization. I learned I started my career at Tech Mahindra, so good to hear the repair, rally, and rise philosophy from you. I look forward to hearing your views as we go further. And finally, Mr. Das, I'd also like to invite your thoughts on the same.
Thank you. Thank you. And it was really great to hear Mr. Sharma, Mr. Thadani, Kavinder's and Apurv's viewpoints and how your esteemed organization, which are very well established in the Indian context and very familiar brands, is really heartening to know how you treated shareholders, employees, and how you came out of it. And it's amazing to know some of the companies even recorded the best quarters, right? Really something to learn from it. So probably DMI is the least known entity amongst the panelists today. We are a financial services conglomerate focused particularly on lending through an NBFC. And 2016, when we started reimagining how retail finance has to be done, we said that we will only like to do digital. Now, call it serendipity or careful planning, I really don't know, because it is difficult to connect, on the dots ahead. But fast forward 4 years, 2020, what we were thinking in 2016 and 17, how to build a business, which is exactly or diametrically opposite somebody like a Bajaj, somebody like IDFC Bank, or somebody like brick and mortar branch based models. We said that we will never do all that. We will like to build businesses which are serving customers using digital stacks, APIs, and deep tech partners. And what we realized is that while we were doing it for the last 4 years, we were doing it because it was our business model, because we did not have any other model other than this. In 2020 March, early signs, because we could realize that there are some tremors. We could start seeing certain parts of the world sending us signals that there is something happening. We don't know. So borders were getting shut down. In fact, we were supposed to meet one of the largest Japanese bank. They were looking at something to do with India. And one of their chairman, or rather their chairman, was denied the visa. And that's where we started realizing that something is happening, right? It's not possible, because he's probably not only guest of DMI, he's probably the guest of country, because the chairman visiting, I'm sure he was trying to meet up with Mr. Modi also. So we realized that something is happening and we need to now immediately move into understanding the damage or the depth of the damage. Of course, we also went into work from home, but for us, work from home was much easier because using digital, using non face-to-face or non-human touch businesses, we were very easily shifted into a work from home kind of a mode. But we serve millions of customers. We originate millions of customers. We have close to now about 5 million odd customers on the book. How do you serve them? How do you keep doing new loans? And we saw immediately lot of resistance from various ecosystem players. But what we did is we we decided two things. When a such kind of a storm hits you, you need to figure out the priorities. So we decided two priorities. One is manage the risk part of it, because we are in lending, so management of risk is one of the most critical piece for us. So we said that let's form a core group and immediately get into management of risk, starting from understanding of customer behavior, who were behaving properly earlier but they may show deterioration because they may have lost their job, they may have got a salary dampener, or their businesses may have shut down because their shops have been asked by government of India to be closed down, and so on and so forth. And the second part was that this is the time where we need to go and look for more deeper connect with the partners, because our model is, the model of DMI is that we lend through partners who are front end. So our partners are Samsungs and Apples and Amazons or whatever. Our partners are fintech aggregators, intermediaries, wallets, mobile POS companies. So we said that this is the time where we can go and showcase to the world that this is the future. This is how you need to build the business. So we were talking to certain global giants, e-commerce companies, OEMs, consumer tech companies. For the last 1.5 years, we have been talking to them, and they were also obviously taking it in their pace or whatever their pace is. And suddenly we realized between the quarters, April, May, June, and onwards, they started talking to us more often, more in a close format manner, where they wanted to go live. And we then said that this is a brilliant opportunity. Let's go and connect with them. Why? Because certain e-commerce companies, like look at Amazon in US, what Amazon does it in 1 year of sales. They probably completed that within few weeks, just before the season started over there. Similarly, Flipkart India during the season time sold the highest ever, and I'm sure we can go on with the statistics, that each of these companies which saw certain possibilities which they had not seen 2 years, 3 years before. So we saw an opportunity over there, and we went and got closer to them, because we expedited our integrations, and we currently are in the process of launching with few of them. We have inked the agreements and we are launching. So that's what we did. The third thing, which Mr. Thadani beautifully explained about how to be compassionate with our team members, we immediately started announcing, because we realized that there were a lot of uncertainties in their mind, that what's going to happen. Are they going to lose their jobs? Because financial services sector is badly affected. If you remember, RBI had come out with moratorium, uncertainties, moratorium number 1, moratorium number 2, then restructuring. So a lot of people become very uncertain. So we announced that nobody in our organization will lose their job during this phase, and we will not. In fact, we went and gave them bonuses, and we could also handle a little bit of increment, which we did. And so employees were made to be comfortable. Second is over communication with shareholders. I think Mr. Sharma mentioned about that. Over communication and closely talking to them makes things much more clearer. They know what is happening. A lot of our investors and our board members are outside of India. They probably are seeing from a different perspective. Of course, few of them are very closely associated with India, but we had to handhold and we had to over communicate, which helped. They saw the confidence. In fact, they were the ones who were rallying behind and saying that this is the time you need to press the pedal, and DMI, which is a digital lending institution, should become a omnipresent. So these are the few things which we did at DMI.
great to hear that. And I think when I was reading about some of the articles on TMI, your business model was probably something which was already ready to embrace the pandemic. But I think what I like hearing about this is that despite being naturally aligned to the kind of scenario that came up, you used that time to forge new partnerships, move forward, and at the same time take good care of your employees. So I think these are a few things which are very good to hear. Thank you, Mr. Das. I'll come back to you.
Arindam, I just want to say to you that your co-founder UV is my nephew.
Okay.
Yuvraj Singh.
So you know what is.
I just realized that this is UV's company and you are
Yeah.
there. So UV went to Princeton and was working there in the US, and then
Lehman Brothers, yeah.
yeah, and then he came back to India. His sister is my friend who attends our Thursday seminars every Thursday. She was India's first mechanical engineer from IIT.
I know Bina auntie. Yeah, she's the first
So Bina is
mechanical engineering.
Bina is my sister. So nice to see that whole thing happening here. Thank you for being part of the.
Thank you, Mr. Sir.
I'll come back to you, Mr. Thrani, now, and probably tap into the other side of what you do. You're on board of IIT, CIS, National Committee on Higher Education, Governing Council for IMA, and a few more. Now, last year, a lot of students over the world, they were not able to go to their schools. They were not able to go to universities. A lot of talent also became unemployed, and the requirements of skill development has undergone a tremendous shift. Now, what are some of the changes that we can anticipate in skilling and education going forward? What are some of the trends that we would see in the coming years?
Okay, I guess this will be the last question that I will be answering, because as I mentioned that I will be, I'll have to excuse myself. So just in case I run out of time, I really thank I want to thank the fellow panelists. I think some very, very useful insights. I was just reflecting on what we went through and what many of you went through. I was in awe of what you went through, because see, our model we thought we did a great job of working from home and making everybody just connected, and we were able to do that because we are a service organization. But for a manufacturing organization, for hospitality, which would have been very badly hit, it's absolutely amazing to hear the stories. So thank you very much. I hope to remain connected with you sometime or the other, and some very useful takeaways. So now back to your question, Ankush. I think if there is one positive which came out of came out of, I can't say it in past tense, while this too shall pass can be considered, but I would like us to think that we should have been saying this before COVID hit us, that this too shall pass, because I don't think we are going to go back to go back to our old ways. Certainly not in education and skills. Certainly not. See, I just want to talk about a few minutes, and maybe you will give me a little extra time to talk right now, and because at 12 I will disengage.
Absolutely.
I was very mindful of your 3 to 4 minutes, so but this time I will maybe use a little bit of time. So I'm saying education for last 250 years has been approximately the same. In fact, there's a joke which says that if a professor and a surgeon 200 years back were put in a time capsule and dropped in the middle of today's environment, then a surgeon will land up in an operating theater where you can hardly see the patient and you can only see tubes and monitors and stuff like that. He'll most probably have a heart attack. Whereas the professor will just pick up the chalk and start writing on the board, because that's what would be happening. And unfortunately, education, while at least for last 50 years, ever since we have all met, we have believed that education needs a reform. And in last 20 years, actually, we've all these committees and councils that you talked about, we've been standing on rooftops, and Anil has been part of many of such expeditions. And now the new education policy has come in, which is definitely a welcome change. But as we all know, policy and its implementation, the proverbial cup and lip gap in this case is very, very large, right? So we don't know how it will take shape. But as I said, decades happened in weeks. In this case, that decade, that reality is, if you ask me, education stands permanently changed. I think the digitalization of education, which was being done in a very, very hesitant manner because there were a few followers, there were many fence sitters, and there were a lot of, should I say, naysayers. I guess we now have everybody converted into this form. Having said that, I have to tell you that pedagogical experience that we are going through is not the most appropriate, except pedagogical experiences were mixed, and that's why some institutions are considered good and some are not. But we were all measured by the same yardstick. At this point of time, I think the winners will be who will come up with more innovative pedagogical models. And I do want to talk about NIT University, where technology driven is one of our very, very strong focus areas, and using that in education. Visible changes that we were able to switch to digital learning platforms. We were able to innovate. And I think it is now possible to imagine again something that we have been talking about, which is the area of what I would call education 4.0. Though I don't think 2.0 and 3.0 happened, we have thrust them upon us. But 4.0, when you can truly believe in personalized learning, individual learning, where people learn exactly what they need to learn, how they learn best, and so on and so forth. I could go on for a longer time, but let me just stay with this part as far as education is concerned. So education, according to me, has made a permanent change. Are we saying that it will be an all digital model? My bet is no. It will be a blended model, and that blending and what is run at what points of time, I think, is the pedagogical model that we are imagining. So we have a Center for Research in Education and Education Technologies. And as we speak, I think there are experiments in our university which have delivered some very fantastic results, some even better than the good old classroom method. Having said that, I think there are experiments which are going on. And I call India the largest education laboratory of the world. I think there is time for us to put our heads together and try to settle on the new pedagogical model which is staring at us, in which the employer, the parent, and the student all will have to play an equal role, and not have a disconnected island, which today in industry and academia are, with an occasional ferry service which runs at placement time. So I think that will be a fundamental change which will happen in education. The change which will happen in skills, and therefore on the workplace, is the fact that people will need deep skills. And even employers will now most probably switch to just-in-time hiring. And that luxury of having a trainee who will join us, who will work for 6 months or for 12 months, I think many of those things will now switch into the campus. And in NIT University, and I'm sure in SOIL as well, you have some programs where employers start appearing in the program 2 semesters, 3 semesters before close, rather than at the end of it, and then they take them to their institutions. So just-in-time skills, deep skills, I think will be an order of the day. And the human skills will start mattering more than technology skills, because technology skills you can actually pick up, but human skills is something that you have to evolve. How you are able to learn remotely, how you are able to work remotely, how you are able to collaborate remotely. I think all these are the paradigms in which education 4.0 will happen. So I'll stop here because my time is up. I asked you for extra time. Thank you very much, everybody else, for giving me the opportunity to speak for a little longer. I look forward to being in touch with you.
Thank you, Vijay. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you.
And I will stay in touch.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Benani.
Bye-bye.
All right, moving on, Mr. Sharma, my next question is for you. What we've seen in the last 8 to 9 months, that the unemployment rate in India has grown from 7% to roughly 27% right now. And what I want to hear from you is, what is your perspective on what role can government or what support can government provide to the industry which can help addressing or arresting this high rate of unemployment which is existing right now?
Thank you, Ankush. That's a very tough question. Let me just share my perspective on this one. Firstly, I think the government's done fairly well with respect to the agri sector, although the farmers are striking, which is very ironical. And also with the MSMEs to whatever they could, whatever their wallet allowed, the purse strings. Of course, we cannot compare the India model to the Western model of the kind of support that some of those governments gave. But I think it's not a quick fix. It's a deep-rooted issue, and no quick fix solution can sort of bail you out of this issue. And I think it's a much pre-COVID period. You can say the jobless growth. Our economy is witnessing a jobless growth. If you take an organization like Apollo, we have been only downsizing. I mean, we like to use the fancy word right sizing. Yeah? But as you use more technology, as you use better ways of manufacturing, selling, digitalization, all of that, you need less and less, or you need different skill sets. So, but the productivity is a new order of the day, because wages will keep on rising, and if we still have to be cost competitive, then headcount is a very, very serious metric for any organization. So you would kind of keep on reducing your. So the only way the jobs will come in a company like Apollo is if Apollo grows, sets up a new greenfield facility, or does something, expands or increases its exports, or gets into new markets, etc. So I think at a fundamental level, government has to really think about this jobless growth and gets its priorities in that sense right, and what are the prioritized sectors that it wants to focus on, because you cannot focus on everything. So what is it that we want to go after? And therefore, I would think that, I have, as the ATMA chairman, I have sort of spoken to government many times that tire industry, for instance, can be a poster boy after IT for India. We are not many number of countries in the world have the kind of robust manufacturing of tires the way we have in our country. I mean, let's take our neighbor, just to give you an example. Pakistan doesn't have a single tire company, yeah? Or many good economies in the world. Also, Malaysia, for instance, has got this probably one small tire company. Yeah? So we are sort of blessed with the domestic local players, the multinational companies, because our vehicle park is what it is, and it could really deliver a whole lot. So government has to really prioritize what it wants to go after. The other thing, to my mind, at a very helicopter level, is that businesses like stability, and while we are well intentioned policies, there have been far too many turbulences that we have to deal, or we have been dealing with. There was a demonetization which came, then there was a GST which came. Uh, uh, as far as the auto sector is concerned, and I'm sure Kavinder must be listening from Mahindra and Mahindra, there's a regulatory overdrive. We skipped the BS5 stage. We went from BS4 to BS6. If you are a commercial vehicle, then one fine day we brought in an axle load increase of 25%, which virtually wipes away the capacity by 25%. And all these are again well intentioned, but does the right hand know what the left is doing? Kind of a thing. How much well debated they are, and how much. And to my mind, also we should take a stock of, is the policy working? So let's say we put in GST. We said it increased the GDP of the economy by 2%. Has that happened? Is that likely to happen in the next 2 years? Is it going to happen in the next 5 years? But we must give an answer to those kind of issues. Particularly in COVID, I felt at least that there should be some time given, for instance, around lockdown. If we are planning to do a lockdown, give the industry or a week time, or 10 days time. The migrant worker crisis happened. Why? Because we sort of did a jhatka on one day and said, everything is closed. Now, so if a wheel is turning, a giant wheel of $2 trillion is churning and moving around, you just can't stop it with a jhatka kind of a thing. Then I would feel that, from my perspective, government's done very well on the supply side of issues. But probably the problem is on the demand side. We have been only doing infrastructure building. So government's trying to spend its way out of this crisis by doing infrastructure, which is all the right thing. But the private capex is not coming in. People like, I do not know how much Kavinder is expanding his resorts, or is he trying to improve the utilization. My suspicion is that all of us have got capacity ahead of, and we are trying to improve the utilization. So we are going to bring in more money into the system only when the demand sort of improves. And the demand side of action, I think, for whatever reasons, have not been as promising as they could have been. Particularly to our sector, for instance, the automotive has been saying that give us a temporary reprieve of reducing GST, for instance, on some of the vehicles for, let's say, 6 months period of time, and get the economy to kickstart. The automotive sector gives a 50% of the manufacturing economy. Get it going, and then they've been talking about something like scrappage policy, which they've been talking for 5 years, right? So sometimes the policy is not well debated. Sometimes they're debated till whatever, right? Then, India is very well placed as far as the hostility towards China, for whatever reason, is there in the world, especially in the US, a little bit in the Europe. So India could gain from coupling into the global supply chain in a big way, which is a very strong demand side action. But do we have that kind of, vision to really go after something like that and say, seize the opportunity, literally? So some of it will happen for sure. But if you can see the ASEAN economies like Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, they are bigger beneficiaries of this kind of a thing. So that's what I would think, that, India is a huge potential. We are facing jobless growth. It's pre-COVID. COVID has only accelerated it even more. And it needs deep thinking and systemic solution. No amount of quick fixes is going to help, and you cannot sort of buy your way out of this. So it's a more fundamental, deep-rooted issue, and I may not be the expert on this one. You need to ask more policy guys, But these are some of the perspectives that I have, that we have the potential, but we need to walk the talk in a very serious way.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma. I know it was a difficult question, but what you shared is very pertinent and very, very important at this point of time. And I do hope that this is the kind of thinking that is going on in the think tanks of the country as well, so that we look at this scenario more from a long-term and a proper solution perspective. Thank you so much for sharing your views here. I'll move on to Mr. Singh. Mr. Singh, we were talking about some of the innovations that Mahindra had done. Maybe if you could give us a couple of more examples of the ones which you wanted to share earlier, and which will help set the trends for future, which will help redefine the hospitality industry as we move forward.
Okay, thank you, Ankush. I just would like to respond to Satish's point. I think, I'm just connected with some of the thinking that we are doing. And we realize that, we are in a position because of our unique business model where we have customers which are there with us, and they are going to be there with us for a long period of time. So we sat down and we said that, everybody is asking what's changing. Why don't we ask the question, what is never going to change? Okay. So, and I must share that we came out with 3 points which we believe will never change. Number one, the need to explore, and by the way, this is in our context of our business, the need to explore and experience new destinations, new experiences. That desire, that wanderlust is never going to change. Pandemic or no pandemic, pandemic will one day go. The second thing we said is the need to affiliate with your family, friends, connect, never going to change. Even right now, while we are meeting virtually, but there is a bonding, there is a camaraderie, there is a bonhomie that we can feel. Okay, even though some of us don't know each other, because we have gone through this experience, we like to share. So same way, the need to connect, bond with the family and friends would always remain. The third thing, which is never going to change, is need to belong to a group, a community, or a club, more in the context of our business, because we are a club. So we said, if these 3 things are never going to change, why should we not think of creating capacity ahead of demand? Now, I must say that we are a little bit, we are in an advantageous position, because over the last 5 years, we have focused on getting in higher down paying customers. And as a result of the uniqueness of our business model, we are sitting on 800 crores of cash. And, in a typical hospitality play, typically there are 2 problems. There is debt, there is occupancy problem. Occupancy problem is solved by having prepaid customers like what we have. And these are prepaid higher customers, unlike the telecom prepaid customers, which are the lower category of customers. So these are prepaid customers who are going to keep coming to you if you keep your experience right. Obviously, there is a big work that we need to do to keep the experience going. That is why I was talking about the seva behavior. So if the occupancy is sorted out, in our business, we also are a zero debt company. And because of the business model, we take membership fee. It helps us to build the resorts. Through the annual fee, we maintain our resorts. And obviously through the food and beverage and consumption, we get multiple annuity streams, which helps us to keep going. And that is what was the reason for our Q1, Q2 performance, because the annuity income streams kept going. And we did not even dip into our cash, and we still hold about 800 crores of cash. So we are definitely thinking of doing capital expenditure. We also believe that leisure can never be done virtually. You will need to get out of your homes to actually enjoy. And I'm not surprised. This is the view we had, that in November and December, particularly Diwali time, and now in the Christmas time, and even on the weekends, we are seeing 100% plus occupancies. And if you remove the weekends, on an average, we are at now in December, hopefully we'll do 80%. So we are, because of our business model, we have a bit of a unique advantage, and therefore we will keep investing. In fact, I have gone on record to say that we would be putting in about 1,200 to 1,500 crore investment in about 3 to 4 years to build another 1,500 room units, because we believe this is a great time, one, to acquire also properties at the right price. I'm not using the word distress because there is no distress yet. So we will acquire properties at the right price. We will build, and we will keep buying land, so that, because that's our raw material, that's our supply. So we will keep investing in that area so that we are able to satisfy our current members and grow our member base, and which is what will lead to a virtuous cycle. So coming back, Ankush, to your question on innovations, I think the critical innovations that I would like to highlight are around the area, and a lot of people would sort of agree with me that digitization got accelerated. Now, whether it is the website, whether it is the mobile app that we have, whether it is the pre-purchase, we did a lot of digitization. By the way, through our app, you can do a contactless check-in. So we have, you can literally fill your details, and as you come in, you have your key ready. You don't have to do anything. There's not even a signature you need to do. You just walk in. So that is one innovation that we believe, even I have seen in bigger chains, because I've traveled recently to some hotels. I haven't seen people doing that. I'm surprised why they don't do it. It's not that expensive either. The second innovation, which we believe, is in the area of building trust and confidence, and therefore lifting your brand position. I distinctly remember sometime in May, I was sending a mail to Anand, and I said, I believe that in this time we can reposition ourselves. Now, how do you think about repositioning in the midst of a pandemic? We believe that in this, as people are coming out of pandemic, what they are really looking for is trust. While the brand gives the trust, but what are we doing different, and how are we going to give the comfort that you are going to be safer when you are out of your home? So once you begin to talk about your safety initiatives, which I talked about, and the hygiene initiatives and the contactless initiatives, and once people begin to travel and they begin to put on social media, as you know, today people are dying to post their social media experiences. The moment they are out, they are saying, I was here, I was there, I did this, I did that. The more they talk about the safety and hygiene and the fact that what we are communicating is actually being delivered, that helps to lift the brand position. And we have noticed that the type of cars that are coming to our clubs now at the resort are there is a completely movement upwards, because some of our members who were probably holidaying outside of the country, now they are beginning to holiday inside. So we are very mindful of the fact that the domestic leisure is going to be big. Okay. And that's what it will propel us into doing the innovations. And let me now move on to the innovations related to the experiences. Now, at the resort, we realized that people prefer now outdoor experiences. And we said, hey, at the end of the day, you have to maintain physical distance of 2 meters. You don't have to maintain any social distance. What are we talking? Why don't we have activities where people can be in a group, but they are 2 meters apart, but in outdoors? Fortunately, in our resorts, since they are spread out, we have that opportunity. So we have a very interesting experience that we found going very popular now. There is a very small startup called Be Live. This is a startup which is actually providing electric bikes and taking you on a tour around in the resort and outside the resort. And this is a startup that we encouraged. So these people, so you are on your bike, which is sanitized, and you're going in a tour and actually exploring places. Then we said, look, outdoor is becoming big. The treks, the trails. Why don't we also look at this startup called Great Rock Sport? This is a Delhi-based startup. We realized that they are a profit-making startup. Very rarely startups make profit, in the early stages. But this one is an amazing startup. They actually work with school children and create some amazing experiences in a way. And they have done about 2.5 lakh students. We said, if these guys can work with students, why can't they work with families? And they said, yes, why not? So we took a stake in that company, and we are bringing some of those outdoor experiences into our resorts. Anyway, in our resorts, we have a lot of adventure and various other outdoor experiences. With them, we will be able to further improve. Now, if you look at another innovation, which I'm very proud of, is that if you're sitting at your room and say that, listen, I am not going out, I want to be safe. If you want an experience in your room, you need to be able to configure the service in such a manner that it's not merely a room service. Can we create a dining experience in your room? So we have innovated there also, and we have created a a plan called Gourmet Express, which actually gives you gourmet food, delivered right at your doorstep. And by the way, since our resorts are far flung, so this is not the kind of service that you would normally see in a resort. Of course, in a 5-star hotel, you would get this service anyway. And last but not the least, the unique dining experiences, which I was talking about, along with the gourmet experiences, is another area that we have innovated on. And like this, the experiences, of walking in a coffee plantation, again, they are something that we have introduced new experiences. So we believe that this is a time to create innovation in terms of experiences, because that's something that people will come for. While our swimming pools and spa remain closed, can we create experiences which allow people to enjoy, while making the whole digitization experience in a very seamless manner? And let's not forget, travel with confidence ecosystem of sanitizing your car, taking COVID tests, etc., landing at our resorts, and doing safe stay program, which is Bureau Veritas certified program, which also gives confidence. And last but not the least, and this is where I come to an end, food is very critical. Do you know that the food that you are eating is safe? Because at one point of time, that was a big worry. So we have got ISO 22000 certification, food safety management system, certified for our kitchen. So that's another reason which is helping us to offer this kind of a exemplary service that we are known for.
Wonderful to hear this, and I think all I can say in summary is that you're tempting me to take a holiday, Mr. Singh.
You bet, Ankush.
Yes.
You bet.
Yes, but wonderful to hear the steps that you've taken in these areas. Great to hear that. Mr. Chamaria, I'll move on to you for my next question. I was reading that because of the pandemic, we anticipate a new wave of outsourcing. And what I wanted to understand is, how is India prepared, especially the IT sector, to deal with this, given the competition that we are facing from China, Brazil, Russia, and Philippines? What is India's IT sector's readiness for this new wave?
Thank you, Ankush. That's a very interesting question. So the way we look at IT is, while we are all Indian heritage companies and we started in India, today we are pretty much very, very global companies. So our playing landscape is not limited to only delivery out of India or only clients out of India. We have a global play. So when we say that China is coming up, Philippines is coming up, it's actually very exciting for us because we can do the business out of there and actually deliver to other companies. If you go back to the very famous treatise on competitive advantage of nations, you would realize that every nation starts with a competitive advantage. And for India, it was actually massive pools of people who spoke English and were not very highly paid. And India started with taking work from US and delivering it out of here. That era is more or less gone. So today, India is not a labor arbitrage play. India is actually an innovation play. India is actually a collaborative business model play. India is actually, can you innovate here in these extreme complex, multicultural, multi-state, uh, highly competitive ecosystem and take the innovation global? So Google Play is a great example. Google created Google Pay for India and today it's gone global. A lot of work which is happening in hospitality. So I used to run RateGain, which is a travel and hospitality SaaS company. It's a data science company which used to help companies like Mahindra Holidays and others do electronic distribution, dynamic pricing. And it's a SaaS company out of India, which we scaled to 60 million. Nothing to do with, low cost labor arbitrage, BPO. Not that any of those businesses are not lucrative. We should look at Indian companies now in the coming decade actually taking up leadership positions in each of our industries and showing the world uh, what is to be done, setting the path, showing innovation and new business models. That's the play which I'm excited about. So when you say Philippines and China are coming up, it's very exciting and it's not really a threat to India. It's an opportunity for India.
Very, very interesting perspective, Mr. Chamaria. Good to hear that. And, I really like the first part of your answer where you're sort of redefining the way the Indian companies want to position themselves globally. I think that kind of positioning is something which is really exciting to hear. Thank you so much for that. Mr. Das, my next question is to you. what I wanted to understand is we've tried to see what organizations have been doing, how we are thinking as organizations and leader of organizations. But what I want to hear is how's the customer response changed during the last few months? Is there a shift in the way they are requesting for services, the way their needs are evolving? What is the customer side of the pandemic story that you hear?
Okay, thanks, Ankush. This is a very relevant question, especially in the last few months. We have seen some very interesting shifts in how consumers are interacting with brands and how a services company like ourselves, which is sitting as a layer to finance them, is facilitating. So what we saw is pre-COVID and post-COVID, there was changes. I'll give you one example, and probably I'll expand on it. During Diwali days, all of us know during those 3-4 days, India sees a massive spike in purchase of various consumer goods, personal loan, and you know loans, which is basically towards uh, enjoying the festivities, maybe travel. Of course, this year there was no travel, but otherwise we see a surge in those packages also. So this year, when we were preparing for season, nobody had probably thought about that how the season will pan out. Typically, 2019, 2018, 2015, the index is about anywhere between 2 times to 3 times during season and non-season. So this year we were wondering that how this will be met. Of course, we had some precursors by thanks to Amazon and Flipkart, which were paving the way, and they were telling us the story that demand is very strong. In fact, they are seeing higher demand than past, but we were not sure about the offline market. Offline market where consumers are walking. The majority of India is still walking in over there. Uh, and it so happened that especially in certain categories like mobile phones, laptops, desktops, printers, wearables, they were almost seeing a 4 times to 5 times of pre-season, post-season kind of a number. And we can easily relate to that. Working from home, all of us, let's say, for example, in our household, let's say we had a requirement of only 1 or 2 laptops. Now, because of working from home, all of us have a requirement of each person. We have 2 daughters, and myself and my spouse. All of us need something to get connected. Let's say the maid who comes to our house, she normally used to carry a feature phone. Now, unfortunately, her kid also is now getting educated online. And in a feature phone, it is impossible because she requested that, can you help me to buy a smartphone? That's what is happening, and that probably resulted in increase of sales. Now, how consumers are finding it difficult in a time where there are fear in their mind that if they walk into a store they may get infected, right? Or they have to abandon some caution. So what we saw is that people started demanding certain amount of safety. They didn't want to touch any surface. And like Kavinder mentioned, that there is a whole, of course, Mahindra probably from a global standard, hospitality standards, is deploying a very different approach to it, right? But imagine a 300, 500, 700 square feet mobile store or a laptop store. They don't think about these things which global conglomerates are thinking. For them, it is very simple. A customer is walking in, ensure that customer is comfortable. Do not try to touch. Do not try to do anything which will jeopardize his or her feeling of safety. So what we started realizing is that people didn't want to exchange anything like a document, right, while purchasing anything, right? Because most of the purchases, 30% of the purchases of a certain category is financed. So we saw these customers very reluctant to exchange anything while purchasing.
His internet seems to have got impacted.
Yeah, I think Mr. Das got dropped off. So I'll move on to my last question till the time he joins in. And while I ask the last question to the panelists, I'll also request all the attendees to start posting their questions in the chat box in the meanwhile, so that after that question, we can pick up some of your questions and ask the esteemed panel. So, Mr. Sharma, coming back to you, my last question today for you is, let's end this on a positive note. What is the biggest positive that you take out of this pandemic, and what is the biggest opportunity that you see at this time, which has come out because of the COVID-19 pandemic?
Arindam has joined from his phone, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm very sorry. I think the internet connection blew up at my residence, so I had to switch on to alternate. So sorry. So I was talking about the customers. We saw a change. They were demanding that we need digital without any exchange of any physical documents. They were not even comfortable doing anything. So that is one change we have been seeing, that people are demanding where it has to be a paperless from start to end. The second thing which we are seeing the change in consumer behavior. People are asking for sachet size finance opportunities, right? Like, for example, there are two things which are happening. A person who was taking a 15-day or probably a product which he is purchasing and he could easily afford to purchase it, he does not need a loan anymore. But it is not about a loan anymore. It is about the convenience for that person, like a payment option. And this has resulted in increase of something called buy now, pay later, or in some forms in US, it is called as a credit card killer. We saw the explosion of these instruments or these possibilities in India, thanks to the e-commerce companies, whether it is OEM, consumer tech companies, which are selling something. And these consumer companies itself is collaborating with various financial services company to promote this. One example of this, I will give you two examples, one Indian context and one global context. Apple launched 2019 something called Apple Card, right? It is a fancy titanium card, and as usual, expected from Apple top designers, it is a very, very clean kind of a design card. Now, there is nowhere any mention of any bank over there. People were wondering that what is happening. Is Apple launching a credit card? Is Apple now into banking? But very few people realized that this is basically powered by Goldman Sachs digital banking arm called Marcus. And Apple and Goldman came together, and Goldman, we all know how the model of Goldman works. Goldman is basically a investment bank and a merchant bank, which is now got into also banking, right? Which is basically retail. And they decided in retail, they will not follow the path of JP Morgan or Bank of America or Citi or Wells Fargo, and they will avoid branches and they will only do digital. So that's what Marcus does. So they went and tied up with somebody, Apple, and powering their entire purchase, right? This is an example of collaboration, various changes in how people look at banking. The second example in India, Samsung. In fact, this is now a global case study for Samsung. That's what Samsung HQ team has told us. So they are known to be a very, very, I don't know, one of the slow moving cheaballs. They are not known for their agility. At least for some time, they were not known for it. But it is very interesting that their innovation lab in California, which is outside of their HO in Korea, is sitting together and thinking about new ways and new age of building things, right? Which is completely disjointed and nothing to do with financial services. But they said that we want to offer a customer, right? Millions of their customers who are purchasing their phones and devices and whatever, electronic items, whatever they sell. We want to offer an integrated with a financial services company. Is it possible? So they went to few of the companies, few financial services company in India, the usual ones. Of course, everybody knows their name. I'm not taking any names over here. And either because of legacy ecosystem or because of their traditional way of thinking, or so-called the fallacy, which is basically the sunk cost fallacy, right? Which is one of the fallacies which investment professionals are very familiar with, where basically we hold on to our investments believing that they will give us return one day, and we know that we are losing, we are bleeding, right? And most of us get into the trap of that for years, right, before we want to give up. So anyway, sunk cost philosophy of some people, they said that no, this is not possible, we don't want to do this. Let people come into the stores, let them select the product. Once they have selected the product, we can help them finance. So let it be the way it has been running for the last 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, 15 years, extremely profitable for us, and we don't want to change anything. Samsung said that no, I think there is a tectonic shift is happening globally, and we feel that there is an opportunity to come together and build it, right? The OEM and the finance company in one journey. So they, we helped them to pioneer that in India. Obviously, we are an India-focused company, and they are now trying to take it globally, other countries, where it is an integrated approach, where the customer is seeing the offer of the product and the EMIs inbuilt into the tablet, which has never happened, before. So these are the two examples which how consumers' behavior is forcing the brands to adapt, right, and think about it very differently. So these are the two things, Ankush, I wanted to talk
Okay,
about.
thank you so much, Mr. Das. And I think we're very short on time, so I'll just go for one, last closing comment from all the panel members before we get audience to ask questions. The same question: what is the biggest positive that you take out of the pandemic? And I also just noticed on chat, Mr. Chamaria, you dropped a message that you need to log off in another 5 minutes. So maybe if I can get your comments first on this before I move to the other panel members, that would be great.
Sure. I think the biggest positive for me personally, and for a lot of people I speak to, is the amazing sense of resilience. So the whole concept of anti-fragility has become so important. I think we're going to see a more and more uncertain, chaotic, complex world where outcomes would be very, very hard to predict. Your competition is going to come from anywhere. We will see a lot of industries getting disrupted. A lot of jobs of the future don't even exist now. In this world, it is what is really, really going to help us, our families, our teams, is anti-fragility, resilience, and an ability to make the maximum out of whatever happens. So I think that's a huge, huge learning and positive out of this crisis, that it's taught a lot of people to be self-dependent, atmanirbhar, resilient, optimistic, uh, connect at a meaningful level, and really, really lead from the front. Uh, this is the crisis which has really exposed all our weaknesses, fragility, whether it's at a company level or individual level. And I hope most of us are working on fixing those uh, and really, really coming out as more resilient.
Great, great. Thank you so much. Wonderful thoughts, and thank you so much for joining the conference. I'm sure the audience will miss their opportunity of asking questions to you, but thank you so much for being a part.
Thank you so much. And bye to all the esteemed panelists. I need to log off for a call, but it was a pleasure seeing all of you, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Sharma, coming back to you on the same question, what is the biggest positive that you see out of this pandemic? What are your thoughts on that?
I go back to the point of the, I don't know whether the debate is still out, whether we call it a black swan event or not. But yeah, it is a event of gigantic proportions. Nobody had foreseen it. So the shock value, I think the shock value is really, to my mind, a big steroid for ushering in changes in the mindsets of your team, of your people, and whether you can use that in a good way to bring in that tectonic shift in your organization. Uh, to my mind, that's one of the biggest positives. To give an example of Apollo Tires, at the turn of the century, we were a small company. We had a turnover of 1,100 crores, and we had 400 crores out as receivables. So what we were doing is, the trade was using our money as their working capital to give us business, so to speak. Uh, and 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 that lent itself to various problems, as you can imagine. And we then decided that to do whatever to change our business model. As Kavinder said, 800 crores of free cash flows he's sitting on. I'm really envious. Uh, and and today we are globally amongst the tire industry the best working capital ratios. Uh, Globally, we're number one on our working capital management. But on the same side, so we learned from that shock that we got, at that point in time. The current thing is that we have been eyeing the leadership position in the country, and we said the range is the way to do it. So we've been spending a lot of monies on building capacities in different areas. Uh, so maybe the strategic trade-offs were not discussed, debated in a very disciplined way, and it's a very capital-intensive industry. So we found that once the wheels stop churning, that how fast you can spin off into a crisis. So as we move forward, we are beginning to talk the language of margins and returns to the shareholders in a way which is very different than we used to do. And what are the wasteful activities that we need, or we did, or we could have done better, etc., etc. So that's one of the things. So that shock is sort of we are using that to and and then of course all the acceleration of digitalization, where to invest your dollar, which is going to give you the. On a personal note, I feel this is also going to perhaps bring in the sustainability part of the environment, and we all saw what the Delhi air could be, and how clean it can be. I'm a runner, and for me, the air quality is a very important parameter for my daily life. Uh, and I think the organizations also, with Biden coming in now, and much of the capital is also now linked to the environment. So I'm hopeful that this pandemic could also accelerate the journey towards sustainability on a larger scale. And I think as corporates, we have a huge responsibility in that direction. So I'll leave it here. There are many positives here, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma. Good to hear some of these, and I share your passion for running, and I agree it's been much easier in last few days. Good to hear that from you. Thank you so much for your contribution. Mr. Das, what's the biggest positive for you?
So, on a lighter note, first, that we are big fans of, both me and my spouse are big fans of U2. And we sometimes chase them whenever they are performing, in few parts of the world. So we were chasing, them in Tokyo and then Singapore or whatever it is. And the audience was about few thousand in a stadium. That's what it can accommodate. And my daughter, who is 12 and just turned 13, she was saying that, what are you guys doing? Who is U2? Why do you guys go to the stadium? Do you know that there is a band called BTS? As I don't know who are they. They're a Korean band, and they are apparently have billions as followers. How much a U2 has? As I don't know, but we love U2. We grew up with them, and we just love them. So that I will show you a concert. How many people did you, you went and wasted money in some place where you went and saw 40,000 crowd, whatever it is. And I will show you some online concert which is happening for BTS, where there are live streaming happening like this right now. We are talking in the in a room, right, where all of us are sitting comfortable in a room, and we are all talking still connected. Like this BTS is performing, and there are more than 250 or 300 million people watching simultaneously live, right? And then there is concepts like which Netflix has pioneered, which is called, what, I'm not familiar with the term, but it is like group watching, right, where a lot of friends watching the same movie or the same show together, right? So the kids of our next generation is talking about it, which we cannot even think about it, right? But times are such that we have been forced to embrace and not. I know there are many people who are still in denial that call it, again, going back to the sink cost fallacy, that our times were the best and that model was the best. I think for us, biggest learning is that we need to adapt and embrace. As an organization, if you were to ask at least our organization that, Arindam, could you have done anything different in 2019 October to prepare for this pandemic? Answer is no, right? I don't think so we could have done anything differently. It is impossible to predict a 10 sigma event, right? One can figure out 2 sigma, one can figure out 3 sigma. It is impossible to prepare oneself for 10 sigma event. Nobody can prepare a company where you have to handle a shock of minus 23% of GDP degrowth, right? It is impossible. But what we can do is that, uh, I think, who said this? I think Mr. Chamaria said this, that we need to build more resilient employees and models, agility, insane usage of automation, right? Which we have to force ourselves, right? Whether we like it or not, we have to force ourselves, right? And be prepared to handle another, although we cannot prepare much beyond to handle a minus 23% shock or even a minus 15% shock, but make our models, make the relationship stronger so that, as Kavinder has said, the relationship is something which will last, right? Beyond anything else. The tough times will maybe last only for a few months or few quarters, but the relationship which one is building with customers, with partners, with vendors, which should be something we should be investing more on.
I think very beautifully summarized, Mr. Das. Thank you so much for your thoughts. And I'll move on to our final panelist, Mr. Singh, for his closing remarks.
Okay, I think it's really, first of all, I really enjoyed this discussion, and I think a lot to learn. And once again, from the bottom of my heart, I would like to thank Anil and all the organizers behind, including Ankush's, the way he's sort of conducted this. I think just the key takeaways maybe for us in terms of the good that has come out of the pandemic is we have learned to define our true north. And for us, that 5C framework helped us actually define our true north, driven by the overall philosophy of RISE. Plus, the way we went about executing things, I think, we can think a lot, we can strategize a lot, but how do you execute? And there are choices you have to make all the time. For example, one of the choices that we had to make was that we pay lease rentals to our, some of our resorts which are on lease. Now, how do you deal with a situation when there is no revenue, but you are paying those big lease rentals? And should you get rid of some of the resorts because they were high cost and you may have done the deal at a certain point in time? Or should you find a way that you will continue the relationship, as Arindam was also mentioning, and yet find a way which is not going to dent your P&L and the balance sheet? So, being mindful about dealing with your employees, or rather the team members, if I may use to say, because I'm myself an employee, all of us are employees, yet keeping a mindset that we are at the end of the day owners of this business at the heart, because the business runs because of us, and it is for the good of all the stakeholders. So keeping that big picture in mind and not taking short-term decisions, that, and I've often made this point that, at the end of the day, probably this pandemic has not built the character. It has actually shown the character of people. You actually discover what you are in this time and what do you stand for. And you may have been talking about some of the things in the past, but this shock event gets you to ask the fundamental questions to yourself as to what you stand for and how are you going to survive not only this crisis but actually make something good out of it. And I heard various panelists talking about what they did. And I think I have also talked a lot about what we changed. And one thing which I believe this pandemic has done to all of us is that, can we see an opportunity in a crisis? And I'm not going to use the word exploit, because for me, exploitation word has a negative connotation. So for me, is there an opportunity that is staring at our face? So I'll just talk about two business opportunities that we discovered during this pandemic, just to make it a little more meatier than talking in general. We realized that if digitization is the way to go, can we create a platform of digital experiences? Okay, can we get into a platform model rather these standard linear models that we work on? So we are actually rechristening. It's not that we are going to move away from core, but actually create another business model. And how do we really think about this business model? And we are engaging with global experts. And again, with this video, you could be anywhere, you are able to engage. Earlier, the whole mindset was, let's meet, let me come to America and meet you, let me come to UK and meet you. Now there is no need to meet. You just get going in one or two calls, you get your confidence, and you start working together. So we're working with some global experts on this business model development. And the second learning for us was that the leisure is going to be big. Can we have a asset light play in leisure beyond Club Mahindra under a new brand? And can we actually create a business which will be truly proud of? And as we speak, in 8 months' time, we have made phenomenal progress, and we have been able to attract even private equity players to look at creating a separate company where the assets will be hosted, and we will be having an asset light play. But not only that, help our core business to secure leads for the future members, and also our members can access those properties. So I think if you look, has pandemic done good in some areas? Yes. But has pandemic as a pandemic, if it had not happened, would it have been good for the humanity? I'm a firm believer that we don't need any pandemic to change our mindsets. This has actually caused more harm, particularly the gap between you know the people who have wealth and people who do not. That's actually got more. And if you look at some of the economies in Africa, they're really suffering. Even us, I think we will take long time to recover. Whatever we may say, it's going to be a long road ahead as far as job creation is concerned. How Satish was talking about jobless growth, I really worry about social unrest. I really worry about the differences that are getting created and how people can upskill in such a short time. Those societal issues remain on top of the mind. At a business level, in our small microcosm, we can do various things and feel happy about it. But you know what? We don't live in actually island. We are a part of a system. And if the system begins to crumble because we haven't set up, ways to distribute wealth, and we haven't set up ways to sort of reduce this equality, it's going to do actually harm than good. And this jobless growth is a real big worry. And pandemic has only created a bigger problem. So if you ask me, I would never wish pandemic for anybody. I mean, any civilization. But in the pandemic, yes, we have got some, seen some, advantages or improvements that we have been able to do. But in the bigger scheme of things, they have kept the environment, the organization alive and kicking, which is good. A lot of us have survived. But what about the people who couldn't really cope up? What are the people who lost their jobs? What are the people who lost their friends, relatives? That's one area which, of course, was not in the scope of the discussion today, which is fine. But that's what worries me. But on the business side, yes, I'm looking forward to future with lots of confidence. As a result of the pandemic, there have been a lot of learnings and improvements that will go a long way in making us a truly resilient business that we are.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. And you're right, we can't forget what you said. Anil, you wanted to say something at this point?
No, I just want to appreciate the rich insights of everybody. And I love what Kavinder said. It's ultimately you have to really ask what matters most to you at this stage of your life. So thank you.
Absolutely. We are past our time, but we'll still take one question before I invite Devduti to summarize. And this question is for you, Mr. Das. Very quick one. It says, how do you differentiate this current crisis with the 2008 financial crisis? Are there similarities that you see? And the part B of that question is also, what kind of shift in the consumer behavior you see in terms of investing? And how do you think young people like us should go about investing in these times? Should we be a bit conservative?
Great. Yeah, I think Subramaniam is the one who has asked this question. So, okay. So in the context of GFC, which is the Great Financial Crisis, which is the, the name given to the 2008-9 crisis, the genesis of the crisis was different. The epicenter of the crisis was different. The way it played out in the economy and the destruction of value was different. And this one, which happened during the 2020, it was very, very different. It probably goes down in the annals of books, history books, economics, or behavioral, or anything, right? It'll go down as once in probably 100 years, hopefully, if not less. The GFC was probably something which happens every 15, 20 years because it happened because of an asset bubble, and because of poor underwriting, because of avarice, greed, whatever you call it, right? But this time it has happened for different reason, but it has shocked the world that how quickly, something which is a biohazard can spend or rather move so rapidly, country after country, 208 or 209 countries got ravaged, various kind of destruction happen. And I wish, like Kavinder, to reflect on the same thing, that we wish it doesn't happen to anybody, any generation, any country. Is extremely sad to see so many near and dear ones pass away without help. The second part of the piece is the consumer behavior in investment is changing. People, thanks to the millennials, which is your generation Z, I think, are looking at ownership very differently than how our generation, and how our parents used to see. We used to have more asset ownership mentality, but this generation do not want to that. They want to enjoy, they want to go for the experience, whether it is buying a house, whether it is owning a car, thanks to the companies like Ubers and Olas and Mahindras and Airbnbs of the world. They want to push towards the experience without owning a fancy place. Those are the things which are happening from a behavior perspective. So from an investment perspective, you need to look at these themes, which are the new age themes. Second is there is a lot of Robinhood investors which has made a quick money. Who knew when we were in March 2020? I remember, I think market had crashed from about 41,000 to about 24,000. And as usual, people were speculating that this will go down to maybe 16,000, the Sensex. Who knew that December right now, 47,000, right? Nobody knows these things. Very, very difficult to predict. Impossible to do crystal ball gazing. People can say whatever they can, but be smart with your choices. Don't go with tips. Very difficult. You may, unless until you're ready to lose your pocket money and your shirt, go after fundamental research and follow few mentors, and talk about it a lot within your peer group. Do bottoms up investing. And I think, yeah, being a bit conservative during this time don't hurt, unless until you want to be a hedge fund, going long and short at the same time. Yeah, that's the advice.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Das. And thanks to all the panel members. I think this is a brilliant discussion. Really, really good insights. And I'm sure the students would have relished this opportunity. And just like me, they must have been making a lot of notes. A personal thanks to all of you. Thank you, Anil, Nitika ji, and the students community for inviting me to be part of this discussion. Devduti, over to you for summarizing this discussion. And thank you once again.
Thank you, Mr. Chopra. Well, I would like to thank all the esteemed panelists for enlightening us with their words of wisdom, experience, and sagacity. Before we end, I would like to invite Mr. Jackson Silva from our analytics cohort of School of Inspired Leadership to share his reflection and takeaways. Over to you, Jackson.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Deputy has given my introduction, I'm a student from postgraduate program in business leadership from analytics cohort. It was really an enriching session for me, and I'm sure for everybody who attended. While what has been discussed was a learning for me, and I would like to take an opportunity to summarize the key takeaways from the panel discussion today. And I think the first one will be from all the panelists, which I can interpret is purpose and values are very important in the time of crisis. The value system, the strong value systems to look after people for the well-being and safety, and even of all stakeholders with empathy and warmth is much more important, and which we can call as empathic leadership. And the second one, which is like trust is more important than ever before, which leads to customer satisfaction and growth. And the third, the need has not changed, but the way the organization connects with the customers have been changed, and which we have witnessed through the digital mode. And the fourth key takeaway is the cost. The business has to be more cost conscious and has to sort out the good and the bad cost for the for to be well prepared with the unprecedented times like this. And there has been so many initiatives which have been taken from the different organizations, like connecting with the people, like Apollo Tires connecting with the people with by having a rendezvous with random people of 10. And as Mr. Singh has rightly mentioned about that, people 80% of people is in contact with customer contact. So it is being created with the 60,000 members. So it is much more necessary at this particular period of time. And as Vijay Tadani sir has rightly mentioned, never let a good has rightly mentioned, decades happens in weeks. And digitalization of education, more innovative pedagogical business model will play an important role for transformation and sustainability. People will need deep skills, which we have witnessed, which we are learning in the School of Inspired Leadership, going through digital mode, learning more of the technologies and all, and learning from the self-leadership class, which our own beloved Anil Sajde sir has taught us in his series. And there is business, and there is another key takeaway for me: the business like stability. India has more potential, and which we can see the way business and economy are bouncing back. The more technology leads to downsizing, and also with more skill set, and we require to be more skill set. So upgrading ourselves with newer skill is necessary. And overall, organizations have undergone significant changes in the mode of operations and have used their competitive advantage to ensure sustainability and growth even during these tough times. We have seen remarkable changes in organization, business operation, wherein the business are compelled to induce fast-paced changes in the way the business fundamentally function and have adopted a more integrated approach. So with this, I express my sincere gratitude towards all the respected panel members, Mr. Kavinder Singh, Mr. Satish Sharma, Mr. Arindam Das, Mr. Vijay Tharani sir, and Mr. Apurva Chamaria, who have invested their valuable time in the discussion and shared with us the rich experience and wisdom which has added to our learning quotient, which we can call it. I also express my sincere gratitude towards Mr. Ankush Chopra, who have moderated the entire discussion effortlessly, adding his valuable insights as well. Lastly, I express my gratitude towards School of Inspired Leadership to have given us an opportunity to be able to hear from the leader of global companies from diverse sectors to expand our perceptions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jackson, for beautifully reflecting. And with that, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude on behalf of everyone present here to our esteemed panelists for enlightening us with their words of wisdom, experience, and sagacity. Thank you so much for being a part of the conference today.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Kavinder, Arindam, Satish. Thank you, Apur. Thank you, everybody, for being part. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you
Anil.
for being here.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Neil.
you.
Great listening to all of you.
Thank you,
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
With this, I would just like to mention that now we are heading for a small break for lunch. We'll be back sharp at 2 p.m. Indian Standard Time and 5:30 p.m. Japan Standard Time to witness another dynamic panel. Thank you very much and stay tuned.
Thank you. Thank you, Devduti.